Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Alexis Dingle with us as our Researcher Celebrity. A brief background of Alexis: she has done her bachelor's in agriculture science with specialization in biotechnology from Tennessee State University and is currently a PhD student in genetics and genomics at Texas A&M University. With this brief introduction, welcome Alexis and thank you. So we always start our conversation that how and when you decided that you want to become a researcher.
Oh, okay. So I decided probably halfway through undergrad. I had gotten involved in research as an undergraduate my freshman year, kind of haphazardly. I was making my rounds throughout the College of Ag and, talking to individuals who I would probably be interfacing with quite a bit. And I met a young woman by the name of Dr. Young. So when I introduced myself to her, we were having a bit of a conversation, and she asked me if I wanted to work. And at first I was, a little taken aback because, I was still in my high school mindset, and work to me was like fast food burger joint, and I was like, no, I don't want to work. I just, worked all summer I think I was working at Golden Chick. So she was like, no, like do research and it'll be a paid opportunity. So I decided to pursue the research opportunity, and then I was doing research every year after that. And at first when the idea was presented to me is like making a career out of research, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that. It took me having to go through the experiences and acquire that sense of accomplishment and curiosity. And that took about 2.5 years before I was like, hey, I really like this, and I might consider wanting to make this an actual career. So that's how I came to that conclusion. Just the love of having questions and trying to figure out how to answer those questions.
So with the 2.5, like 2.5 years of research experience, you might have tasted a decent amount of ups and downs in research. So before committing to PhD, what were your thoughts?
I don't think so honestly, I feel that I didn't have as many downs because I was under the tutelage of professors who had kind of crafted these nice little neat projects that are appropriate for an undergraduate. So I was in a way shielded from a lot of the struggles that could come along with the research. I didn't really encounter what the true ups and downs and everyday struggles can look like until I started my PhD.
Okay.
So yeah, I wouldn't say it wasn't like what it is right now as a PhD student.
So it's like the real taste of research was missing until you started PhD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the journey. So starting the first step, when you make up your mind that now you want to do a PhD, what was the things which were your priority on your priority list, and how you selected the program you are in, and also the lab you are in?
Okay. So I would say my first priority was figuring out what type of research I wanted to do, because with a concentration in biotechnology, my major was in ag science. I got a taste of kind of how biotechnology can be applied to a bunch of different scientific disciplines. So I needed to narrow down my interest. And I did that just by having conversations with different mentors that I had done research under, kind of doing some research online on Google, seeing like depending on what major you pursued, what type of work you could do. So that was the first step. And then the second step was figuring out like what institutions. I didn't take the approach of figuring out kind of like a niche and then PIs under this niche and reaching out to them directly. I looked for the program first and most of those are programs that offered rotations.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you have to be accepted to the program first.
Yes.
And then you get to do your rotations and pick your PI.
Mm-hmm.
So I was focused more so on a quality program and then finding the PI and the research, the specific research afterwards.
Okay. So yeah, as we always say, and during these conversations, so that the young enthusiastic brains who want to pursue their PhD to start with, and then want to remain in research for a longer time, that there are different ways. As you said, that for your undergrad research, it was everything shaped up. You just go perform their experiments. Most of the time, they work fine because everything is standardized. But almost everything topples up down when you start your own PhD with your own question, because even in the PhD programs, it has been seen that in some of the labs everything is laid down, you just have to perform the experiments, and then again it goes like, as you said, the more of the undergrad research where there is every experiment sorted for you, all of these things, so then most of the time the success rates are very high. But what lacks in those programs or in that particular scenario is the troubleshooting, the time which actually builds a researcher. So let's talk about the journey of your PhD.
Okay.
How that started and various ups and downs you would like to share.
Okay, so I don't think I mentioned previously, but I had applied to a number of microbiology programs, and my same mentor, Dr. Young, she sent me a flyer from the genetics, at the time it was the genetics program at Texas A&M, and she mentioned that I should apply. Even though it wasn't a microbiology program, they had microbial genetics that you could, you know, pick a professor that was specialized in that area. So I decided to apply, and I personally felt that it was one of the more quality programs as far as all the different components that they had for professional development, the number of professors that you could choose from. Like, there was a lot of options as far as research. And then, so now I'm in the program, and I kind of have to figure out, you know, what am I going to do now? You know, I have to pick who I'm going to rotate with, and then what lab I'm going to join. So we had this nice opportunity set up for us where we could listen to professors give like an elevator pitch of what type of research their lab was doing. And my PI, I didn't even know he had existed when I was just scanning, you know, the site to look at all these different professors, because we have maybe, it has to be more than like 80 professors that can recruit from the genetics program, so there's quite a bunch. And it wasn't until Dr. Edelman came and gave a talk that I was like, hey, there's people doing research on mosquitoes. This sounds interesting. I would like to, you know, see what that's all about. So he actually ended up being my first rotation, and I knew I wanted to join his lab after the first rotation, but I still had to go through the second and third rotation. So that's how I ended up in the lab that I'm in now.
Okay. So speaking of the rotations, because this is more in like United States, European state, and not very much in like now it's even coming up in Indian like, you know, research institutions also. So if you can say that if someone has the opportunity to do the rotation, so what are the things they should consider, like depending on if it is 2 rotation only allowed or 3 or more. So shall they take it, and if yes, then why they should take it?
Okay, so are you asking this from
the
like
student's perspective? If they have the opportunity, so that they can rotate, or just can be with one, as you said that you had to go through all the 2 other rotations, but you already pick your first, like, you know, the lab you are in.
Okay. I would say that, I guess before even being in a particular program, because it's program specific, so if you are someone who is made up in your mind and you know what type of research it is that you want to do, a particular field, maybe go for a program where you just you don't need to do rotations. You can reach out to the PI directly, set up a conversation. If there's, if you guys mesh, then they agree to take you on, then you apply to the program. So they have programs like that. But if you are someone who's open-minded, maybe haven't necessarily figured out where your research, what type of field you want to home yourself in, then I think the rotation type of programs would be a better bet. And as far as like once you're in the program, figuring out like who you want to rotate with, I don't think many programs will give you an option of how many rotations you want to participate in. Like if it's 2 rotations, you have to do the 2 rotations. If it's 3, you have to do the 3. But at that point, you just have some interviews with those professors, read a couple of their papers, see if what they're doing tickles your fancy, and you kind of get like a snapshot. We have 5-week rotations, so for 5 weeks, you kind of get to speed date these professors in their labs and see if it's a good fit. So.
Yeah, this is very important, and this is something which we always say, that if you have the opportunity to interact with your prospective PhD advisor, without any fail, you should take it. And as Alexis also mentioned about, like in her case, it was 5-week rotations, but depending on different programs and availability and opportunities, so now you have this opportunity to be in person in the lab, and then you figure out that how is the lab environment, how you are having the conversation with the PI, how approachable they are, and within a month, 4 weeks, or the time around that, depending on how comfortable you are with, before deciding any advisor for PhD, this is very important that you should see through for at least 3 to 4, 5 years that you are going to stay with that lab group, with the PI, and if you feel suffocated in first 1 month, there is no way that it is going to get off. Things will get worse when you will move in process, because now we are talking about failed experiments. Now we are talking about timelines that you have to graduate, and all of these things, they are very important. So if you have chance to be in person, have all the conversation with them, that is very important. And this is one thing which we always say, that being vocal is your right and every student should take it. Alexis, now talking about the opportunities, you picked up the advisor you liked, and then you started the PhD program. From starting the PhD and now you are about to submit the PhD, what are the things which never changed, and what are the things which changed in your mind totally, unlike what you have thought when you were starting a PhD?
Things that never changed. It's kind of a difficult question. I think let's see here. I'd say things that have changed, like qualities about myself. Tenacity and perseverance, for sure. And just how I go about coping with tough times. I've had a lot of time to practice that throughout the course of my PhD. As far as things that have not changed, I don't think there's anything that hasn't changed. This has been a very, I don't know, like the word to describe it. I've grown. A lot of things have changed just as a consequence of going through such a challenging but rewarding process.
Absolutely.
So.
No, this is something which my PhD supervisor, Dr. Tiyadak, he used to say always that PhD does not only change your name by putting a prefix of doctor, but it changes you as a person forever, for the rest of your life. And that is because it is the training for the rest of your life. And if you survive PhD, you can survive anything.
Yeah, I would agree. Like this is absolutely the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. So I definitely feel like I'm coming out better for it.
Absolutely. So now your way when you were going through the tough times, the challenges, if you want to suggest based on your experience how one can cope up with that, because PhD, all of us know,
Mhm.
is a roller coaster ride
Mhm.
with a little less highs and a lot of lows.
Yeah.
Okay, so then people now do talk about mental health. They do talk about burnouts.
Mhm.
Based on your experience, what you can share and suggest?
I'd say therapy. I started therapy, um, at a point during my PhD because it's tough. It's a very tough and challenging process, and sometimes you may not have all the answers of how to overcome what it is that you're struggling with, and it's
Mhm.
okay to seek professional help during those moments. And I also say rely on your village, whomever that is, whether it's family and friends, because I am the type of person when I'm stressed, I tend to isolate, because it's hard to exercise, just being social well, at least for me, when I'm stressed and I feel like I have all of these deliverables that I need to make, and my PhD work is still like in the back of my head when I'm out at brunch with my friends or something. So that was
Mhm.
something that I had to try and change. Like, don't isolate. That's the time when you need to rely
Yes.
on your peers and your family members even more to help you and to provide that sense of relief. And prior to these healthier mechanisms, I used to engage in escapism. Like I'd binge watched some type of show, anything to just take me out of the stress I was currently facing in reality. And that's not the best way to go about things, but you do what you got to do to
Yes.
get through. So, and to each his own. How people go about coping is different depending on your personality and
Yeah.
the type of support that you have, because maybe you're not as close with your family,
Mhm.
and in instances like that you need to find kind of a village elsewhere, whether it be maybe a graduate student association or a church or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is again based on the personalities. Like different people can connect to nature,
Mhm.
or like they go out with their friends and then just chill out,
Mhm.
and then now they're relaxed. And some people just go for a walk and then they get rejuvenated, and again going back to
Mhm.
the research work. So, in your experience, what is the most challenging part of PhD?
Hmm. Um. Wow. There's a couple of them. So to say the most, it's just being able to hang in there and fight another day,
Mm-hmm.
because there's, at least from my experience, there were days when things weren't working out.
Mm-hmm.
Experiments weren't working out, and I don't know why they aren't working out. And because I don't know why, I don't necessarily have an answer as to how I'm going to move forward. And during those times, it felt almost futile. It's like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? There were times where I contemplated, I don't know, leaving and joining the military because I was just so stressed and overwhelmed with why every solution I was trying to come up with at a point was not working. And then also there was that feeling of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And, being in your third year and you haven't generated any significant data, and you came in with your cohort and people are already like publishing papers, or they have, substantial data to talk about, that can, at least for me, it made me feel a little not so great about myself as a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, you just have to be able to keep fighting, because one thing that is guaranteed to lead to you not getting a PhD is quitting,
Yes.
right? But if you can keep waking up and decided I'm going to go in the lab again today, put my best foot forward, eventually something is going to come out of it. So
Yes.
I think just to go through the process of acquiring a PhD, you have to have perseverance. A lot of people think it's about the smarts. When I tell people, like, I'm a PhD student, they say, oh, you must be a very smart person. And like, yeah, I'm sure that there's some smarts involved with it, but more than anything, it's just being able to persevere and having the willingness to keep tackling an issue until you find a solution.
Yeah. Perseverance is the key, that's for sure. And this is for all the young researchers who are facing the challenge right now and are thinking of quitting. As Alexis just said, that hang in there for that day, and then who knows, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, everything will work out, and then you don't have to think about quitting. One thing which research trains us is that you are not a giver, you are not a quitter. You have what all it takes to be a PhD student. You have it what it takes to accomplish your research goals. Yes, there will be challenges, but that's the fun when the troubleshooting comes in. And then there are so many stories about troubleshooting that a person just put some, giving a hammer on a car, and then all those stories we know. But to know where to put that hammer and with what speed takes years and decades.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the experience of your research, you are about to submit your thesis, you might have long plans on research. How you see yourself as a researcher in just next year? So this is not about where you see yourself after 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just after, so you get graduate in December, and then how you see yourself?
I guess help me understand a little bit more, like, how do I see
you want to be in active research, you want to do passive
okay.
research, you want to be a researcher forever rest of your life?
Yeah, no, I still want to be in research actively. I love being in the lab, actually, despite all of the struggles that I've encountered over the past, 5 years. I love the scientific process, and I still want to be in research. And yeah, like my next career steps, I'm still going to be involved in research. So. And
this is something which we always say, that once a researcher is always a researcher. You can never give up. Once you had this training, and especially if you had gone through the PhD, the process changes you forever. So now let's talk about the most fulfilling part of PhD. So we did talk about the challenges, how you overcome and all that. What is the most fulfilling part of your PhD? Because you're almost about to submit your thesis and then graduate.
I feel the most fulfilling part is that, I've made it to a point in my PhD that, some people, they don't make it to, and they decide that midway throughout the PhD, their desires for their life may change, and they may want to pivot. And then, what I guess is even more fulfilling is the fact that I am a first-generation college student. My parents did not go to college. And also, I come from a very small rural town in South Carolina. So I didn't know anything about a career in science when I was growing up, when I was in high school. I found my way to this point very much so. I describe it haphazardly, it was just kind of like figuring it out as I went. And that doesn't work out for everybody, but it worked out for me, and I love what I do. And so I feel that, being an African American woman who's first generation and didn't grow up with the exposure to the different type of careers that exist out there. A lot of people who were friends of the family or teachers or whatnot. I was a great student in grade school. I made all A's, and a lot of times they would say, "Oh, you should be like a lawyer or a doctor." That's kind of like where people's scope stops, and it's like, okay, well, what if I don't want to do either of those things? Yes. So I did not have that exposure and that knowledge of like what else existed, like maybe like nursing or I don't know, being a real estate agent, police officer, just things that type of jobs that you need in a community for the community to function, right?
Absolutely.
And so coming from that to where I am now is a very fulfilling feeling. I feel very accomplished and proud, and I hope that this is a testament to other young Black women that, you know, the sky is the limit. You can do whatever it is that you want to do.
Absolutely. Thinking out of the box is the first thing. If we just put out everything in one word, that there were career options when you were, going to school, and researcher was not one of them. You still chose that. And now you are an example for your relatives, the town. So, what are your thoughts about women in STEM?
I think women in STEM is awesome.
Absolutely. We all agree with that part for sure.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, what are the points which needs to be acknowledged more when it comes to women in STEM?
I think there needs to be more conversation, and not just conversation, but some efforts and some change put behind that conversation as far as like how we support women who have careers in science, because it's one thing to have the career, but when the career makes it hard for you to do other things that you aspire to do, whether it's have children, or, you know, there's talks of women having to try to determine when's the best time for them to have a child. Is it during your PhD? Is it during your postdoc? Is it when you actually get a job? And how having children at a certain time can be like career suicide. It really should not be that way.
Yes.
You know, we should definitely start thinking of ways where we can provide that support to women, to women, and not make them have to choose between a successful career and other pursuits that they desire.
Absolutely. And so Empowering Science Foundation believes in breaking the barrier. This is one of the barrier when it comes about having the family, like getting married, then babies. Nobody talks about that males should have to make these choices. They also does make these choices, but nobody talks about it. When it comes to women, then it is like, as you said, people start talking about suicides in the careers, that if they will do this, they probably will not be able to do this, which we always say that there is no way. A researcher is a researcher. There is no gender biased in that. And always like either it is about the publications from various different corporate houses, that women are known to be a better, efficient manager than, this is something which we always try to say, that when we talk about women in STEM, what are the things we are talking? And as you mentioned, it is about the support, so that they don't have to make the choices which are not even choice for when it comes to a male. But for women, they are. So how we can support that? What is this modification in the system which makes them feel more inclusive? And it starts from the nursing homes to the creches, so that they can bring their babies to the place and they can still nurse, feed them, and enjoy the research. The second part is like how it is different from, so as you mentioned that you are the first generation of college goers in your family. And when you see your peers who have this long heritage of, 5 generations that went to college, and then they did so many different things, what are the different in their thought process which you have experienced and will suggest the people who are still struggling to be first generation of their family, or
I feel, as far as like thought process and the difference, I have noticed personally that individuals I've interacted with who have a couple of generations before them that pursued higher education or even got their PhD, there's a lot of things that they don't have to figure out, being that someone before them had already gone through the process. They can tell them, certain things to look out for when it comes to picking your PI. And, like, these are the things that you need to prioritize if you want a career in this area, if you want a career in pharma, so they don't have to work as hard to get that information and to seek it out, And so that's one of the main things that I noticed was the difference. Like a lot of things I'm figuring out in retrospect. I'm like, oh wow, had I known this a couple
Mm-hmm.
years back, I would have made this decision or this decision. So that's one of the main things. And I think just we just have to do a better collective effort in helping those individuals who have articulated an interest in pursuing this education, and like having more conversations and not making it like a treasure hunt for them to get this information that's vital to how they go about pursuing their career.
Absolutely, and one of our initiative with this researcher celebrity is that if somebody is seeking this information, and now with researcher celebrities like you, when you share your experience that coming from like being the first generation of college goers to researcher, then PhD, and next is that you want to be in research forever. This is for all of those researchers who happen to be the first generation researcher or just college goers for the say in all around the world, that you are not the only one. You are first generation for the family, for the town probably, but there are people who have done that. Alexis is live example right now here sharing the journey. The only thing which needs to be sorted at your end is what you are passionate about, what gives you happiness, and then if you can only sort out these two things, the third thing and the rest of the thing will always fall in place, because you will start seeking and then encounter these conversations. Our researcher celebrities, our Empowering Science Foundation, we are always there to help you, connecting you with our researcher celebrities, and we're also by mentoring them, because this is also one of the program which Empowering Science Foundation does, that they put a mentor and mentee in touch, and then from there they can have their own paths. So the guidance was one of the part which was very important, that if somebody have walked that path through, and now somebody who, like in your case, like researcher was not even an option when you were going to school, when you choose it like this. So now when you are talking to your friends and when you are going visiting your family relatives, how do you see that your choice has made an impact in their lives?
I feel like they look at me and they're very proud to see someone from the family accomplish what I've accomplished, because the idea of a PhD is just so lofty, for a lot of individuals in my family. It's like, wow, you're super smart. Like, you've done something that, a lot of people aren't
Not
able
anyone has
to
done.
do. So I think more than anything, it's been a source of inspiration and pride. And hopefully, for maybe like my cousins that are now having children,
Yes.
we can talk about those things, and they still can make decisions, and now they'll be able to know, okay, these are things that I can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you have added one more career option, than research.
Yeah.
People can actually walk on this path. Okay, so now for your future vision after your PhD, as you already said that you want to become a researcher, people do talk about academia and industry. Your choice, where you the path you are taking, and what are the reasons behind that?
Yeah, so I am pivoting towards industry. And as someone who came into my PhD program thinking that I wanted to stay in academia, I just saw some kind of things that just come along with the job of being an academic. And I didn't think that they were going to balance well with other things that I wanted for my life outside of my professional career. And maybe, for my future children, they might feel more inclined to make some of those sacrifices or whatnot, because I will have provided a foundation where they can be supported, and it's not so much of like, oh wow, if I make this decision, this might be a tough road ahead. So that without saying too much, that's kind of like the thought process that went into me deciding to pursue industry.
Yeah. So this is also one thing which comes often in these conversations, that some people are more inclined towards the academic research. Some because research is research, doesn't matter where you are doing it. It's just a different tag which people and society in general have accepted, that academic research, because there are translational research which can is happening in academic research, as well as there is this hardcore fundamental research which is happening in industry also. So nothing is mutually inclusive or exclusive. It is all research in shell. But this is what we say, that you have to prioritize yourself. Research remains the same. It is the pros and cons which comes with these two tags of academia as well as an industry. So you have to prioritize the things which you enjoy the most, your personality, and then the most important part, you at least should be happy. This is the minimum, that you should be happy when you are doing it. What happens in future, nobody knows. But you live every day with happiness, you go to bed and you are happy for your day. As a researcher, I believe that is the only thing which is required. Now when we are walking towards the edge of the conversation, I would like to ask your recommendation and suggestion to students, that whether shall they do a PhD or not.
Okay, that's a good question. I think that before you start pursuing a PhD, before you start even applying, you need to think about what is it that you want to do with the PhD, and really give some intimate thought to that, because you may find that the goals that you have for your career, your life, you might not necessarily need a PhD. Yes. And a PhD is not easy. It's not a cakewalk. It's an arduous journey. And if you can get to where you're going and maybe not invest the 4, 5, 6 years, maybe more, that it takes to get the PhD, maybe you decide that a PhD isn't for you. But if you really have a passion and a love for the science, sure, do the PhD, and just understand that it's not going to be an easy journey. And then once you've decided to pursue the PhD, you start picking programs, you start thinking about the type of research, you still need to be asking yourself, what is it that I want to do with this PhD, right? Because if your career, like let's say your end goal is industry, let's say you want to work in pharma, well, maybe you should think about what type of research lab you want to be in, if that's going to be your end goal. So you need to always be asking yourself at every step of this decision, along this journey, what is it that I'm wanting to get out of this PhD, and how does this decision I'm going to make right now impact me getting toward my end goal?
Absolutely. And I think this is the point which I will also say to all the audience, that if you are thinking of pursuing a PhD, or if you already have started with your PhD, what Alexis said is the most important point which you should take out of this conversation, that what you are going to do with this PhD. Once you have this degree, what you are going to do, how you are whatever you are learning, how you are going to make an impact in the society, why keeping yourself happy. Because as we always say, that do whatever makes you happy, and if PhD happen to be one of them, absolutely go for it. It was great having you as our researcher celebrity, Alexis. And now we'll say to the audience that if you want to write to Alexis, you can write to her. If you want Empowering Science Foundation to put you in touch with our researcher celebrities, we are there to help you. What we ask from you is the passion, perseverance, and enjoy your research. What we offer you is whatever we can, by connecting you with our researcher celebrities. You only have to be happy. And with this, we'll say thank you,
Thank
Alexis,
you.
and good luck for your future research.
Thank you.
This is the only part which